So welcome to Benny's Designs. This is a live show with live peoples. It's recorded for Ustream.tv and also for YouTube for people to watch at their leisure. So I'm watching chat. There's lots of people having a natter. So it's all good fun. I'm going to go through some of my brushes in preparation for tomorrow. I'm doing a live paint along, and it's with these artisan mixable oils. And although I have some big paintbrushes, I also like to do fine detail. So mixed in with my nice watercolor pencils were my kind of old, kind of scruffy and cheap and cheerful fine brushes. So I decided that I needed to kind of mix them away. And of course there are paintbrushes in there. These will be going in there as well. Get some good coverage down there. You want some really fine thin flat coats of colour if you're doing oils. If you work in thin layers, and then when you get some body, then you can start putting glazes and details and highlights and lowlights. But to start with, you need to kind of slap it on there, but you need it to go to flat, not impasto. So you don't want any bumps. So a big brush sometimes is quite good. Excuse me. So once you've got your flat colour, and you've got a decent and your background and everything, you then start to think about building up and more detail. And I don't have my book, I don't have my thing with me. So then you start to go to this size brush. So this is my next size brush that I go to. And throughout that time, I also use the fan brushes because you can blend. So if you don't want any harsh lines, you can blend them out, and I find those quite good. So I'll be using those tomorrow. I'll be using palette knives for mixing because it's very good not to mix with brushes for two reasons. You need to get a really good mix, and if you're doing this with your brush, you're getting it up into the bridge, I think it is called, and it's not good for the brush. You really want to use the bottom half of the brush. In watercolor it's slightly different because in watercolor everything comes out, but in oils and acrylics and water-based medium, it's not a good idea to get it up there really. You want to use your brush and use a palette knife for mixing. So these are flat brushes, and again you get some nice flat edges. So we've got the flats, and then you can paint with wedges if you want lines or if you want some more detail. Hi Miss Q, welcome to Benny's Designs. So these are my next ones, and again you get some nice flat areas. Excuse me. That's slightly different, it's got half the hairs missing, so again it gives a different effect. I might do a tutorial about brushes, but I'm sure there are lots and lots of people out there doing this. So that's the flat brushes, and then you go into more detail, and they look kind of fluffy there, but when you put them in water or you get your paint on them, that's when you see how nice the brushes are, because some go to a point. And this is how you know how nice a brush is. So look at that one. Now it's nearly gone, it's past its end. So even with oils, twist to a point, and you've got quite a lot of paint here, but you've got a nice point. So again, that's another, I'll zoom in a smidgen and then we can see a little bit better. So that's again another thing that you need to look at. But you can get some nice handles as well, nice to hold. Some are chunkier than others. There's a mixture of pro art. There's a couple of cheapy ones and some that I've had so long. But I mean, I've been painting, well, I've been painting 50 years, but in 1979 I first went to art school. So I have two brushes from 1979 still. I don't use them very often, but I still have them. So we've got the fatter ones. Recently I've bought kind of wedges and unusual ones. And I think this set here, and again I bought this, I don't think I've used it, but I will do. This is, what have I got here? Now that's his oil and acrylic, and probably that's the Winsor Newton, that's the only one I've got. I didn't realise it said that on it. These are cheap and cheerful. Yeah, most of those are kind of really nasty, cheap and cheerful children's ones, but I still use them for mixing. You know, if you want to use a brush for mixing, buy a children's set of cheap brushes. So again, some more round ones, and then we kind of get a bit smaller. So this is a Winsor & Newton Series 8, and I do try to keep the plastic on if they're nice. It's another kind of round one. And then there's this one. I'll pick this set out because this set actually tells you which brush is called what. So it's actually quite a good set. Haven't used them yet, I don't think, unless I bought them. I think I probably bought them at a model show because I don't normally buy. I don't normally buy brushes like this, so I probably bought them because I was at a model show and I couldn't get out to a shop. That's how normally things happen. The last couple of years I found it more difficult to go shopping. Normally hubby used to do a model show and I would go off, and if we were near London I'd just take the train in, go around the art shops and the galleries, but can't do that anymore. So I think that's not so bad. So what we have here is, this is called a cat's tongue, and so it's flat and then it goes to a point, so it looks like a cat's tongue. This one is an angled shaper, sorry, an angled shader. So it's flat and it has an angle on it. And then we have a round, which is just a typical round. And this says a prolong crafter. So I don't know what that is, but they're all pro art. Probably a bit fatter. Maybe it doesn't go to a point, that's what it means. It's not round, it's kind of not quite as good. So that's just a rough idea of what they're called. I might keep those out for the oils actually, because I think they might work quite well. Odd little flat brushes. Again, I'm going to keep these two out. And then we get smaller and smaller. No, Alfie, sit down. Smaller and smaller rounds. So you go into more and more detail. And you bring out more and more detail with smaller and smaller brushes. I might leave that one out as well. So this is an angle shape shader again, and this one's by De La Rowney. Has anybody got any questions? I'm going to put the De La Rowney ones to one side. I think I'm going to keep these for my acrylics. So that's just a flat one. It's a cheapy one. I think that's just a cheapy one. But some of the cheap ones, if they have a nice angle, you see that's an angle one as well. I'm going to put with the acrylics and with the oils because it means I can use them. So again, they're going to go on that side there. So we have a series 7 sable there, so I don't want that in with these. Now most of these I think I can use with my acrylics. Those three, there's a Pro Art. I can afford to use those with my oils and acrylics, but my sable ones I don't really want to. Really. Sorry, I don't know why he's barking, bless him. Alfie, come here, please. One daughter's gone to work, one hubby's gone to a funeral, bless him, and under there, please. And one daughter's still in bed and she's just got up, and that's what he can hear because he thinks we're alone. Sorry about that. So I've got one or two series 7 which I want to put on one side because I would hate anybody to pick it up and want to start putting oil paint in it. So and one of them I bought for £1.99, and I thought, oh wow, I've got to buy it. And then I'm such an honest person. I said I really think you've got the wrong price on this. I said, as much as I'd like to pay that, you know, you really need to change the price. Sorry, Alfie's having a moment. And I went back to the counter and I said, I think you need to change the price on this particular paintbrush. And she said, no, 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 that's the right price. I said, no. I said, honestly, trust me, Series 7, Windsor, is it Windsor Newton? Yeah, Windsor Newton, finest sable, Series 7 is not £1.98. And she said, sorry, 99p. And she said, well, that's the price on it. So I have a Series 7 pure sable, Windsor Newton, and it has 99p on it. So I treasure that one. So I'm going to start using these actually, and I have another one. So I have they both look quite because I paint quite the same. Yeah, they're both the same though. So they're both 00. And then my husband bought me a 5, bless him, when we went to London a few years ago. And the worst thing was they were all 99p, and I could have bought hundreds of them for 99p, and I didn't. So anyway, but I'm going to put these. I'm going to put these somewhere safe because I don't really want to use those. See, I'm too precious with things. So the next ones, and again, I'm going to take the Daler Rowney ones out because I'm going to use. I use my Daler Rowney for. I'm going to use those for my gouache. So I'm just going to put those to one side. So these are acrylics and oils, or you can use them for big watercolours, but I don't do big watercolours. I have some other watercolour brushes here. But you would use these for watercolours or for oils. But you need your best ones that you do buy, use those for your watercolours. And then when they start to get a bit fluffy around the edges and you can't get that beautiful point, like this one, they go curly. They go fluffy and curly. See if I've got a black. See, they go a bit curly and a bit fluffy. So that's now going to the oil or water, mine are water-based or acrylics, because they're no good for watercolour. They are, but I'm passing them on rather than buying brand new brushes for my oils. Although I'd say I do have hundreds round the corner. So we've got one or two of these wedgie kind of ones. That says pure pony hair. That's a rigger. That's a rigger. I'm trying to keep my riggers out, so you kind of get smaller and smaller and smaller. And again, there's the Aquafine from Daler Rowney. And I've got a Cotman watercolour. So I've got a couple of those. This one looks like it's almost like a rigger. And again, I look at the brush now. That's going to be quite okay for doing watercolour in a colour book, and it's a nice rigger. It's not too big, it's not too small, and when you start to use it, it keeps its point. Yes, please, I. And eventually you end up with little tiny diddies. So these are from 0 to 10-0, and there's a couple of 20 10-0s in there as well. And you get to this one, if you can see in there. And different companies again have different different numbers. So those brushes are not so bad. So I'm going to put those in. These are my beautiful watercolor brushes. So again, you wouldn't start doing your acrylics and oils with these. So I need to now move all those in here because these are the ones I'm going to be using for every day for my gouache. So watercolouring and gouache, these are all the riggers I have, and they're normally in 3s. We've seen them all before. I keep them in my little Victorian, whenever I've dumped it. I have a little Victorian, I think it's for paintbrushes. It could be for pencils, but I keep paintbrushes in it, and I've bobbed it somewhere. So all my riggers, and again, if you wet them, you can tell they're all going to stay in the right place. And they're going to be for my fine water when I do watercolouring. So when I'm manipulating colour, whether it be a little bit of watercolour, a little bit of gouache, Caran d'Ache, art bars, Derwent pastel pencils, Derwent watercolour pencils, Inktense pencils, ink blocks, art bars. What else have I got? That's pastels. Anything that I'm going to put a little bit of colour, and then I want to manipulate it with a damp brush to get a watercolour effect, but no water. I use the riggers. If I want anything else, and I'm using gouache or watercolour, and I'm using gouache as a flat colour, I will be using, and I didn't realise I had all these. I'm so excited. I thought I only had one. I found a 10 and an 8, and the 6 I was using. And look at this one. This is a 12. And the reason I wanted these is when you wet it and twist it to a point, it holds the colour, but it goes to a point, so you can play. And that's what I've been using for the for this one. So if you, and it doesn't release these watercolour brushes here, and this is why I wanted to do this today. Somebody asked me about the watercolour brushes. This is the watercolour brush, this. Now when you wet it, you get that lovely fat, and you can twist it to almost a point. But when you, it does give sometimes a bit more water out than you need for a colour brush. But these Daler Rowney flat, oh no, that's the wrong one, series 11, and I've not used this, so it's still hard, look, because I've never used it. Here we go. They all come with a bit of a coating on it, and when you twist it, it's all soft now. When you twist it, you get the most amazing fine point. So you can have a big amount or a small amount, and again, it doesn't give too much. So I've used it in this. There's a sheet. When I do the dragon, I'm doing this dragon in gouache, so it's my first play. And again, 1979, as a graphic student, we used sorry, Alfie's been throwing his weight around, I do apologise. I can't find my dragon. Come out, dragon. I put stickers on the top here as well. There's my dragon. So when I'm using a small space and a big space, it's allowing me to do that. So I love these for gouache. So I'll be using the Pearl Art Master Series 11 for the gouache. And three sizes are actually probably perfect. And I actually have, in fact, I have a 2. Thank you, darling. Can you take that one away for me? That'll be off. Please don't miss that. It's been open 10 years. Thank you. I've got liners, and there's the little Diddy spotter one there. It's so tiny. But again, you know, if you want a tiny bit as a spot, it's called a spotter for obvious reasons. Let me just see what other ones I've got. See if I've got any. I've got a miniature one. I think that's the only ones I've got there. So they're going to go in my pots for that. So these are, never used them, so I've bought them and popped them away somewhere. So I actually have a full set of these, and I bought some, and these other ones were £10. I don't know how much the Art Master Pearl ones are, but I thought these are probably going to be the same. And again, they look very similar. They go to a point, and that's what I wanted. So I probably will put all these together and use these for gouache. In fact, I could do that now. I can open this up, and again, all these will be quite stiff because they've been, you know, they store them like this. So you want to wet them, and then you could use your soap if you had. That's going to be a bit crunchy. That is not going to come out. Yeah, it's out now. They probably want a real good kind of wash, and then So when I do my colours, because I'm going to do a series of colour books. Oh, so I'm quite pleased I've actually got a brush thing in there, so I can put them in there, I think. That'd be good, you think? And if I'm really lucky on the other side of this, I can put the other ones. I may as well keep them in order, seeing as I happen to have a perfect set. Probably bought them like that, but not at the same time because I would never buy this many. Um, but that is amazing. I have a 10, a 12, an 8, a 6, a 4 and a 2 of the Series 11 Art Master. Don't think I have any more. I used the Series 55 and I used half riggers and miniatures. So I'm going to put those there because I don't know what to do with those. Oh, I'm quite pleased about that. And they will probably go down there if I want them to. So that means if I go anywhere now, when I get all my gouache in here, I don't really need anything else. I've got my gouache. Probably actually only if it was for watercolour, for colouring a book, I would just use number 6, I think. Take number 6 with me. Because there is a space in here. I can't believe they sent me the wrong one, but never mind. I don't think I can do anything with that because it costs you more money to send things back. So that means I've got my paintbrushes sorted. The only thing left is the watercolour brushes, which are really, really good. I have a few thin ones and I love them when I'm doing my own work in a sketchbook. A sketchbook which allows a light wash, perfect for watercolour, but not gouache because you wreck the brushes. But anything that's water soluble, any of these would be perfect with a water brush and a colour book and a sketchbook. Colour books do not like water brushes, really, but they're so handy. Having said that, as I said, when my husband was poorly, I panicked because to say we didn't know what was wrong with him, and I grabbed my number 1, which is, I knew it was the driest because that's why I like this one. But I didn't try it in a colour book before, but I knew it was the driest. It was still quite wet, but I grabbed this and this, and I thought, well, I haven't worked in this, so I took this with me, and I managed to keep the brush quite dry with a piece of kitchen roll, because I usually have a piece of kitchen roll tucked in the back somewhere. And I managed to colour this one-handed, and I only used 2 squares. This is the Peerless. I've forgotten the name, but they're called Peerless watercolours, and they're little squares. And if you can see, I used the tea rose, and I used one of the greens. I think it was the hunter's green. And as I say, I did it one-handed because I was with hubby, so I did it one-handed so I could hold hubby's hand. I was in the wheelchair, so it worked really well. This just sat on my knee, and I could do it one-handed. And kept my tissue, my kitchen roll on here to dry it off a little bit. Get a lot of water off, a bit of colour, and manipulate it. And I managed to keep it quite. Dry, but it's not easy. It doesn't take long before that watercolour brush wants to give out its water because that's what it's designed to do. But if you're careful, you can do it like that. But because I sometimes I don't want to do that. I don't want to be thinking about the gushing of water. I want to just be able to blend colours, and so that's why I started using the rigger, because the rigger allows you to get into small spaces with a little bit of colour and blend out to a beautiful watercolour. This one, I think this is the best example. I think this is done with watercolour. It's done with a little round palette with watercolour, mixing colour and just blending the colours with a rigger. And I really enjoyed that. Just sat and played, and it gave a watercolour effect, but I didn't have any water. This was because some kind of person doesn't know how to use a roundabout in York and pulled out in front of, he didn't stop and we had right of way. So there we go. And so I spilt my tablespoon of water, but I coloured most of this with the cap. It's one of these caps of water, the little top from a water pot. And so I had a tablespoon of water. And so I love that. No water on here. Liked it. But managed to get away with the number one because at that point I didn't have, when I did this one last year, I didn't have, I hadn't tried these in a colour book. So there's a couple of brushes that are quite dry, so you have to choose your brushes wisely and see if you can use a dry kitchen roll or dry tissue to take a fair amount of water off, even if it's a dab, just before you get your colour on. It's not going to flood your pages. That's if it bothers you. So I hope that's been helpful. I thought I'd go through the different brushes. So what I'm going to do is I've got this colour book, which I was a bit disappointed with the images. I thought they'd all be like this, because I thought it was from a particular artist, so I was a little bit disappointed. But I don't like the images, so I'm going to use this as a really rough kind of practice for lots of different brushes and lots of different water mediums. So most things out of here, we know what this book does. We know this book is dry. We know this book can do from dry. But I'm going to use the watercolours, the gouache, the Inktense blocks with different brushes on different pages. And I thought that might give us a good indication. So if you don't have a particular brush, you might think, oh, I've got to go out and buy one. And this is not what I'm about. I'm a tight Yorkshire lass. Try to use what we've already got, if at all possible. So I want to go through some of the brushes, the normal brushes you buy, how we can kind of work with them and just kind of manipulate them a bit. Might be the mixture of the colour, it might be using them on certain pages, because some pages you think are going to be fantastic with water are not. And even I got surprised. I love this book, but I could not believe that this thick, gorgeous ivory paper did not like water. And I couldn't use my art bars, and I really wanted to use the art bars, and I had to give up. But I could use gouache, so I used gouache because the gouache doesn't need you to rub and manipulate like we did, like I did in here. Scratching a bit of colour and manipulating it, I thought wouldn't touch the paper very much. I scratched a little bit of colour here with that was the Caran d'Ache, and that was the Derwent Caran art bars. And colour to colour, you can match them up pretty much the same. So this is the face off that I did started a video on. And scratching a bit of colour and then manipulating it, I thought would work in this book because it's thicker paper, but it didn't like rubbing. It didn't like that. So I've used gouache, and so gouache is now my best friend, my new best friend. But again, you've got to be careful with your colour brushes, and you cannot use a water brush with gouache because it will ruin it. Well, you can do, but your brushes won't last as long, put it that way. So I intend to go through some of these brushes, obviously not the huge ones, but all the different shapes and sizes in colour books so that you can think that you do not have to buy tons and tons of different ones. I will say that the riggers do react slightly differently. You can be very dry and dry on Bible pages with a rigger, which I don't think you can do with an ordinary water brush. So I hope that's made things a little bit clearer. A few of my brushes. Thanks for watching.